Now, in the past on the channel, we've built many cheap budget gaming PCs, particularly ones of very, very low prices, and they've always performed okay-ish for the price, but nothing that you'd really want to build today. One thing that I don't tend to do is actually pick up full built systems, and that's because they generally are just too expensive for us to play with. But recently I've found some really good models out there just for us to have a bit of a tinker with, and this is one of them that I found here. I paid just £25 for this PC, and when it arrived, it actually had a little secret inside. So this little system here that I paid just £25 for actually brings back a lot of memories. It is extremely heavy, it's got the old ODD slots in the front with a DVD drive, and it is extremely noisy as well. After a bit of research, I found that this little system was actually built in around 2011 by a company called Yo-Yo Tech. They don't seem to actually build PCs anymore, or they do, but they generally deal in things like esports, so super high-end stuff. But of course, back in 2011, they must have done a range of PCs because this was a very entry-level system. It was the Yo-Yo Tech Viper Carbon CS. It had a really, really nice name, but inside of it was not the greatest of all parts, and it was advertised exactly as it would have been all the way back then. For the CPU, we have an Intel Core i3-2100, not very much cop nowadays. It has a 650 watt power supply, just about. It is a little bit of a controversial unit in this one, particularly after the research that I did on it. It also has only 4 GB of DDR3, but it does come in dual channel, so at least that's something. And it also has a 500 GB hard drive. Yes, that is right, it is a mechanical hard drive, so even today's testing, because we're not really going to touch this system apart from its standard spec, is going to be a little bit slow. But as soon as it arrived, I did realise there was something up with it. And that was, if you just look through the vent here, you can actually see the remnants of a graphics card. Now, this system wasn't advertised with a graphics card at all, and when we first started to test it and plug it in to make sure it all worked, it didn't work at all. So that was a little bit of a shame, but opening up the side, we realized it was a very simple issue. The graphics card in this machine was actually unplugged, so as soon as we plugged it back in again and turned it on, it actually started to work. I don't know why the graphics card was actually unplugged in this system. Once we actually plugged it into the power supply, which does come with 2 6-pin connections, it does actually fire up. We get a picture, we can install the latest drivers, even though the card is quite old now and it's not officially supported by AMD anymore, but you can still get some Windows 10 drivers to work on it. But I'm sure when we actually come to doing some actual game benchmark testing, we'll probably find out. If there are any issues with it, it will crash or it will cause us some kind of problem. But so far, it's actually worked okay. The actual graphics card in this unit is an older AMD Radeon HD 7870. Now, that graphics card, again, is not much cop, but it was built around the same time as this system. I can't find any references online to them actually providing them with cards like this in it. So I'm guessing that at some point somebody bought a very cheap desktop PC, which back then would have cost about $500, something like that. And they included a graphics card probably up to a year later. Maybe they already had the graphics card ready, but considering this machine was from around 2011 and the graphics card's about 2012, that's kind of the suggestion it makes to me. And as far as the system goes, it's actually a pretty clean system. There wasn't that much dust in it. There's a little bit in there, but nothing that was actually going to stop it from working. Everything seemed to be plugged in and working perfectly fine. The DVD drive works. It is quite loud, and some of that I put down to the stock Intel cooler. That is something that you can easily upgrade, but it does come with 2 GB fans in the front and back, so there is a little bit of airflow in here. I'm not 100% sure where the airflow actually comes from the front, because it is a pretty sealed unit there, which probably could be causing some of our issues, particularly with the noise from that fan if it's struggling against getting air through. But apart from that, it seems to work perfectly fine. The power supply does say it is a 650 watt, and this was made in the time before you had those 80+ ratings, so it doesn't actually have anything on it. But I did do a little bit of research into it, and everybody says it is pretty much a bit of a bomb, really. They were not rated up to 650 watts at all, and the maximum you should really be looking to kind of draw from it is around 430. So the setup inside of here is actually perfectly fine for that, although you may want to consider replacing it, particularly if you are going to upgrade a system like this. The PSU also does have a blue LED fan, which is a little bit weird, but it kind of works fine. Again, it is one of the things that contributes a lot to the noise. Maybe the fan in here doesn't actually change speeds or anything. It seems to just be on full all the time. And I'm sure you'll probably hear that while we test this system. But can a system like this actually still play any games? Well, this is what we're here to find out. So we've got the system all hooked up, and as you can see, it does display a picture. It is the graphics card there that is producing that, and as I said before, the drivers for it they are in legacy mode now, but you can get Windows 10 drivers for it, which is what we're using, and they seem to work perfectly fine. They installed perfectly fine, and there was no real issues there. I think you do even get access to AMD's software with this one. Yes, you do. You do get access to the Radeon software, which is pretty cool, to be honest, because I really didn't think that they'd support it that far back. I have disconnected the front and rear fan, so the system may get a little bit warm, but it is actually really noisy. When I said that it brings back a lot of memories, this system is really heavy, it's really noisy, and it even gives you that really cool old-fashioned beep when it actually starts up. Of course, a system like this is very basic. It was when it was new. It's a very low spec machine then. It's a very, very low spec machine now. So we can't hold our breath too much on playing too many games, and we're not even going to be able to attempt to play anything modern. Just to even install the operating system and get as far as opening Steam, it takes a very long time. And a lot of that is down to just the 4 gigabytes of DDR3 RAM. Windows 10 alone really needs an 8 as a minimum, and the old mechanical hard drive. The old mechanical hard drive there is still running, and it's actually not the loudest thing in the system. I'm pretty sure it is that Intel cooler there that's the loudest thing in the system, but it does work. It is actually loading things up. It just seems to take a while to do it. Apart from that, we do have a few games here just to see what you could play on a system like this. I'm not one to throw away things like this, because I think even people with a very low budget, and of course this only costs £25, that is a very, very low budget, particularly for a PC, would still like to play games, and there are some fantastic games out there. We are living in a time when there are thousands and thousands of games that are available on things like Steam and Epic that will play on older systems like this, and they were great games too, and they're still great today. So we have picked a little bit of a selection. Of course, this system will have no problems playing something like Half-Life 2. That will run absolutely flawlessly, and you're pretty much going to hit the cap on the FPS on that game. So if you want to run it any faster than that, you need to unlock it. Getting into game, it would probably take a little bit of time due to those components, but there's absolutely no point testing that. So we're going to test things a little bit more demanding and maybe something a little bit more fun. Now, the first game that we're going to test is Spec Ops: The Line. For anybody that has never played this game, it is actually reasonably old now. It doesn't take a lot to play, but it still looks fantastic. And if this machine can just pull this game off alone, I think somebody is going to have a good time with it. Now, like I said before, the games on this system take a while to load. It took a good 2 minutes for this game to even get to the start menu, so we're not even in the game yet. But I do believe this game requires you to change things like video settings outside of the game, so you have to kind of go back to the menu. So we're going to check that first before we actually load up the game, and then we'll jump into it and see what kind of performance we get. We probably will restrict all testing today to 1080p, maybe have to drop it to 720. This system wasn't really designed for this kind of stuff, particularly at this kind of resolution, and I always try to hit a high preset. Should be able to cope on games like this, particularly with their age, but we never know. But we'll drop over to the options in this game. We'll go over to graphics settings, and we'll double check what we've got here. So we are currently running in 1080p with a very high texture detail. We're going to lower that to high at the moment, see if we can at least give it a chance. Shadow detail we're going to leave on high. Full screen, we're going to turn off the VSync at the moment. We're going to leave ambient occlusion on, and then like the overall quality here is custom now because we've changed things. So what we'll do is we'll jump back out of this. We'll see what kind of performance we can get inside the game. The game is loading up, and the system is actually going a little bit crazy. The fan speeds seem to go up and down all the time. I'm not really sure what kind of BIOS this motherboard has got running those fans, because they are all plugged into PWM or 3-pin headers, VC headers. It is an Asus motherboard, and they are very basic, because when you had systems like this back in the day, or even pre-builds nowadays, they come with very basic boards. But we are in the game now, and as we can see, we're getting a pretty decent average FPS at the moment of around 85. The 1% lows are not the best though. It's a 1% low of 10 at the moment, and we haven't really moved. So a system like this is actually really struggling here. It's not the best experience. So we'll head over to the settings, see if we can actually change anything while we are in the game. So we can turn a few things on and off. It's just the resolution that we can't change. What we will do is we're going to turn all the I think we'll go to the overall quality. We'll see what settings we've got there. We've got a very low setting here, and it has enabled our VSync, so we're going to put it on very low. We'll turn off the VSync just so we can see what kind of performance we get. and we'll go back into game. Every time the game actually loads, it does go back to a Windows screen, but it comes back fairly quick, which is not too bad. I think some of our issue here really is that 4 GB of RAM in the hard drive. Two very easy things for you to upgrade, and it's super cheap as well nowadays to do, but that's going to be for another video. Now that we're back into game, we can see that our average FPS has gone up by quite a bit. We're currently getting an average of around 99, 100 frames per second, although those 1% lows are still not providing the best experience. We'll just rappel down here in the game and we'll see what happens. Big stuttering as we do that, so it's not the best experience here. I think to be able to play this game at a reasonable performance, or particularly to get it smooth, you're going to have to play with something like 720. Unfortunately, this is a game that's just not going to cut it, to be honest. There is major stuttering as we go around corners and things. We can't even change the resolution without going back to the main menu yet, so I don't think we're going to be able to test that. But what we'll do is we'll drop out of the game. We'll get back into it. It's going to take a while to do this. We'll set it to 720 and we'll see if we can at least smoothen things out a little bit more. So we're now back into game and we have dropped the resolution. We are running in a 720p resolution, which is probably what this system would have been playing at, or at least people would have been aiming for that back when it was made. And everything seems to be running a lot better. The system is getting a little bit more noisy now, but our 1% lows have increased by quite a bit, and we don't have that major stuttering when we turn the character. As you can see, the quality in picture has declined by quite a bit, so I'm wondering if we can now bump that up a little bit in the settings. Pop over to graphics. We'll set the overall quality to a medium. We'll turn off VSync again. We'll leave that there where it is now, and we'll go back. It'll jump back into Windows and it'll try and refresh and get back into game a little bit. So actually that was much quicker than it was before. We'll go back into the game. Doesn't really seem to have made that much of an effect on the picture quality at all. It's still quite blurry, but then you'd expect that with that kind of resolution. We are, though, unfortunately, we have dropped our 1% lows to absolutely nothing now, and the game is going crazy all over the place. The biggest limitation here is that CPU. It's currently pegged at around 100%, so you're just really going to struggle with a game like this. It is a bit of a shame because I thought this game, with anything, was actually going to run perfectly fine. Apparently we need to go a little bit older, or at least something less demanding than this game, which is pretty crazy, to be honest, but it's fun to see, and I'm sure we will find a game that will play perfectly fine. But on to the next. So as Spec Ops: The Line made us a little bit sad with this system, it just couldn't really cope with it. I've decided to try something that should be super easy for it to play, an even older game, but something that's even more fun, to be honest. And that game is Serious Sam HD, probably one of the earlier kind of first-person versions of the game, and it's always been great fun, particularly if you play it in co-op, so somebody could still have fun with it today. As we can see straight away, we are currently getting an average of 200 frames per second with a 1% low of 118. I can imagine that that will drop quite a bit, but we'll go over to the options. We'll check our graphics options here. We are currently running in 1080p, and that's pretty much all you get. There's no kind of quality settings on this game, or it doesn't appear to be. But we have disabled VSync and that kind of stuff. So what we'll do is we'll go back to the game, see how far that 1% low drops. It is going up and down while we're in the menu, but it seems to be reasonably okay at the moment. That 1% low just dropped to 6 FPS there, but we didn't feel or see anything on the screen. I'm sure once some enemies come along, it's going to tell us if it's any better or not. Slight delay in the character or the enemy there dying, but apart from that, it seems to run perfectly smooth. One of the things that you can get away with on a game like this is those low 1% lows, because you're basically just running around shooting everything until you die. So kill these things there, kill that one there. These things keep jumping on me. In this game, the screen will fill up quite quickly with enemies, so I can imagine that's going to actually cause this system to have some issues. At the moment, the CPU doesn't even seem to be that bothered, really. It's running at 40% with the graphics card running at 55. Now, this system does have a little bit more in it. We can completely tell from that there. But for some reason, it's being held back. That could be that limitation in RAM there, because we are near enough using 4 GB of that DDR3. And that's not good at all. It's probably going to be throttling everything, and the hard drive itself will also be throttling, particularly the loading times and spawning of enemies and stuff like that. But so far the game is playable. You can get away with it. Anybody that has played this game in the past will remember how good it is, and they'll probably want to replay it again. But it's good to know you can play it on a system like this. There's no issues with doing it. We've got another enemy here for some reason. I don't know where he came from, but kill that guy. See how far we can get in the game. I'm not really sure where we're going now. Probably through this door here. We've got more little catacombs. We've got a little bit of jump in there as we start to load things up. So I'm definitely thinking it is that RAM. The graphics cards are now at 64%, but strangely enough, all the temps are perfectly fine, particularly on a system that hasn't even been cleaned or changed the thermal paste or anything. The graphics card's running at 58 degrees and the CPU's at 50, a bit more stuttering there. Again, the game isn't running the smoothest, but due to the type of game it is, you could get away with it and you can play this game perfectly fine. So I think we'll try something else. We'll see how far we can actually push this system and see if we can get even the most slightest kind of decent experience out of a modern-ish game, and we'll see how far it goes. Now, before we even start getting into the next game, we know it's not going to perform very well, and the game is Black Mesa, the remaster of Half-Life 1. It is much more demanding than all of those other games, so we're not going to actually jump into any kind of 1080p testing. What this is going to give us is a good baseline for any kind of things that we do to the system later on, but we'll head over to the settings, we'll go to our options, double check our graphics settings, which is just behind there. We are currently running in 1080p. We will need to change that. We can't leave that on there. We're going to go all the way down to 720. The game should look okay with that kind of resolution. I'm not sure what it's going to do to the screen now that the system's trying to actually render that resolution. It's going to go a little bit weird and we're going to have to try and get that back somehow. I'm not 100% sure what's going on now. The system is very, very slow at loading things up. Even when you're changing settings inside a game, things will just drop. It'll freeze for a few minutes and then eventually it does come back. I'm going to say it does come back because sometimes it does. Game's just dropped there, but if we open it back up again, or if at least we alt tab to it somehow, it should come back. Okay, so apparently the game really didn't like changing the resolution. It's just been hung here now in the Windows screen, running Windows in 720, so something is clearly going on with the system. I think what we'll do is we'll give it a few more minutes, and if it doesn't come back, we'll reboot the system and we'll restart the game again. Hopefully it has saved those changes and it will kind of start in 720p, but we'll give it a few minutes, like I say, and then we'll come back. Okay, it actually managed to come back on its own. Just leaving it a few minutes, it did load the game and we are in 720p now. We'll pop back over to the settings because we want to double check what our other settings are on. We've got to our video settings here. We've got vertical sync off, lens flare on. I think we're going to have to turn all of this stuff off. Oh, something's going on here. I don't know what's going on. It's a little bit delayed in the menu, so things are going a little bit weird. We're going to turn off lens flare. I'll move the mouse out of the way. Let's see if we can do it with keys. Going down the settings here, we are going to turn off our lens flare. We're going to turn off chromatic abbreviation. We're going to turn off, we're going to leave that noise shader on. Motion blur, we're going to turn off. Anti-aliasing, we're going to leave that on, but we're going to turn the model detail down to medium. Texture detail down to medium. Water effects, we'll turn all these down to medium. Give it the best chance that it's got. God rays we're going to put on low, and we'll save those changes. And of course, saving those changes means that the system's locked up again. This is not a great experience, but for anybody watching out there, this is the experience that we used to have back in the day, particularly on games that would have tested or pushed the systems when you've got a hard drive and only 4 gigs of RAM. It is getting there eventually. Everything has got a real big delay on it going forward, but we will push forward. We're going to get into game. We're going to get some kind of metrics out of it because we need that for some kind of baseline going forward. There we go. So we're back in the game now. 720p, pretty much medium settings. We've got lots of enemies in front of us. It's not a smooth experience at all. We're currently getting an average of 34 frames per second with a 1% low of 4. This system, there is clearly something up with it because we're currently getting, or we're currently using 38% or 60% now of our CPU and only 29% of our graphics card. I think again we are running out of RAM big time here because we are running at nearly 4 gigabytes again, but that hard drive really isn't helping things. Trying to kill enemies is near impossible. I don't even dare zoom in with this crossbow. Well, we can zoom in and it doesn't freeze, but we're not going to be able to hit anything at all because they're there 1 second, they're there, then they're gone again the next. This guy is going to get it because I can't really get to him, so we're going to use a pistol now, see if that's any better. Where did he go? Where did he go? He's around here somewhere. I think he ran back up here actually. All right, so we managed to kill an enemy. This is not going to make for a good playing experience, and if you haven't played this game and you do want to play it, don't play it on a system like this because it is a great game and this will totally ruin it for you. But It's actually quite funny, really. There we go, we died. We didn't really get a lot of performance out of that there, around 34 frames per second. You get lots and lots if you're looking at the grass when you're dead, but that clearly isn't how you play the game. This system will literally be restricted to the kind of original Half-Life series type of games and really old stuff in its current form. But we, of course, don't want to leave it that way. Just going to exit the game here because the fans are starting to really spin up now, and I think because the FPS was going up, it started to get a bit warmer. In general, yeah, you don't want to use a system like this in its current format. For £25, it's okay because it's something fun to play with, and you can see what kind of games it's got playing and what you can play on it and stuff like that. But there are a few changes that you want to make to it. I think what we're going to do to this system next is we're going to give it a bit of an upgrade. Let's see if we can bring it back to life. We're going to do that in a different video though, so make sure you subscribe to the channel to catch that one. I also want to see what this graphics card can actually really do in 2024 by testing it on its own in our benching system, because at the moment the CPU really did hold it back, and I didn't think that was going to happen. I thought the CPU was actually going to be the part that really allowed it to open up, because the CPU was kind of released at roughly the same time, and back then CPUs were always ahead of everything else, particularly when it came to power, and you could keep them for a few generations. But clearly the i3-2100 just isn't enough for this graphics card. I'm not 100% sure what tier of graphics card this is. I haven't done that much research into them. I'm sure when we do a video on it specifically, we'll do that research and we'll let you guys know. But apart from that, let me know in the comments below what you think of this system, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Can't believe we used to wait this long for things.